Good morning and welcome to the Coaches Show brought to you by BCE TV. We are in week 9. I'm here with Lincoln head coach Brad Drehle. We are talking about the 6th ranked Lincoln Cardinals, 7-1 on the road against conference opponent and 5-3 Wellington Napoleon Tigers. Coach, here after a little bit we'll get into the conference implications and the district implications of this game, but as we do every week, I want to start with last week's game. In Week 8, the Cardinals took on the Vikings of Cass Midway, 1-7 in Lincoln in a senior night fashion. And on blackout night, the town had a literal blackout, which forced the two teams to play on Saturday. The Cardinals, you guys came out of the gate, I guess, a little slow defensively. I think you said it was a 12-play drive, that opening drive out of Midway. It took 7 minutes. They marched down the field. Eventually, the Cardinals banded together, got a stop on 4th down, and then in the next 17 minutes proceeded to score 50 points. Yeah. Coach, though the outcome was never really in question, what were you feeling on that first defensive possession?
Well, there were a lot of things I think that came into play there. I don't think we were focused as much as we should have been. When we have the blackout and we lose the game on Friday night, our kids were zeroed in and really focused Friday night, and then to turn around Saturday and to do that, I don't think our focus was quite right. We didn't line up to the formation right. Yeah. We get motion and we have some rules as far as the way that we rotate and what we do, and we didn't execute those right. Our minds were just not there at the time, and we were able to right the ship and get a stop, and then once we were able to do that, then things kind of fell into place for us.
Definitely fell into place, definitely just dominated. Pretty much from there on out, Brett and I were in the booth kind of laughing a little bit because on that first drive, there were a couple instances where you were starting to get animated on the sideline, just kind of, like you said, frustrated with maybe the lack of focus starting there. And then considering that I think that next drive was a 2-play drive and Darren had like a 66-yard touchdown catch. Yeah. You guys kind of got, like you said, righted the ship very quickly, woke up. Let's start with some offensive stats here. Your team totaled 561 yards and scored 7 touchdowns on offense. That's pretty impressive. Rushing, leading the attack was Johnson, as usual, 18 attempts, 174 yards and a score. Connor Line, not as active this week. It seemed like maybe a concerted effort to spread the ball around. He handed the ball to Hesse and Eckhoff out of that wingback spot.
A couple times where Connor had carries, he pitched the ball.
True, yes.
So, there were a couple of those runs that probably would have added to his total a little bit. But, yeah, we were trying to get his seniors and trying to give everybody an opportunity to get a touch on senior night.
Exactly, and to your point, Caleb Mundy had an 18-yard, or got credit for an 18-yard touchdown run where he only maybe ran 7 or 8 of the yards. Connor ran that veer to Ross, kept it, runs outside, and then kind of, it's funny to see that because Mundy's lined up in like the slot, right, and on that play, and then a very delayed pitch, maybe not what we're used to seeing out of a triple option, but that is what it is.
That's correct.
It's kind of an elongated triple option. So speaking of Mundy, he got involved, 2 rushes, 37 yards and a score. Riley Sanders, the freshman, kind of there at the end when the JV squad took over, he had a nice read where he took it up the middle. He had 2 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown. Connor, we mentioned, 4 carries, 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. So while maybe not as involved as normal, still very efficient and effective, yes. And then on that JV crew, Jaden Kelly, 2 touches for 25 yards, and Anthony Schrader, 3 touches for 33 yards. So pretty efficient all the way around. Kyle Eckhoff had 21 yards on 3 touches, and then Mac Hesse also had a carry for 3 yards and a 2-point conversion. So
Mac had one other carry for a little over 20 yards also that got called back. But
yes.
Yeah, it was good to see all those guys have an opportunity to do something. And Jaden, Jaden's a kid that's first year playing football. He had a big run on his first play. I think he went 21 yards or 27 yards or whatever it was, and then he got a 2-point conversion. Yeah. He was pretty fired up. So.
Well, getting around the edge, he's fast. He got out there. He's got some burners, so that was good to see. In the passing game, Connor lined 8 for 14, 168 yards, very efficient. 2 scores, no interceptions, 2 2-point conversions. Riley Sanders also 2 for 2 for 4 yards. I think both of his passes went to classmate Dawson Parrott. And we'll talk about Dawson in a little bit once we get to the defensive side. Receiving, Caleb Mundy had a catch for 19 yards. Kyle Eckhoff had 4 for 39. Darren Roberts had 2 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. So not wasting any plays there to get his points. So yeah, offensively, you guys very efficient. I said, never really in question. I think Cass was a little outmanned. You guys came out firing, trying to get everybody involved. Offensive line did a good job. What stood out to you on the offensive side?
I guess the thing is, once we got the ball and were able to get going, our kids took care of business. We weren't real focused on that first defensive drive. We turned around and got on the offensive side. We were focused, and we made the plays that needed to be made. Our seniors stepped up and did a great job, and we've got some young kids that are stepping up and doing things too. But Darren and Caleb continue to play well every week. Darren has improved tremendously. His attitude, his body language, everything is so much better, and he's reaping the benefits of that, and we're reaping the benefits of it.
Yeah.
Caleb, same thing. Each week he's making one or two big plays for us at different times, and it's just fun to see all the kids have an opportunity to get involved and to do things. And the challenge is making sure that we find out what those kids do well, so that when we get into ball games that we need them, that we can put them in places to be successful.
Exactly. Okay, well, moving on to the defensive stats. As far as tackle leaders, Kyle Eckhoff and Johnson both had 11. Kyle also put in a pass breakup and a forced fumble. Riley Sanders, freshman, had 7 tackles. Let's see, Eli Tolliver, 4 tackles. Ben Eckhoff had 3 tackles and an interception.
Yeah.
That was a fun play. I think, was it Mac that got his paw up and
Mac tipped it, actually, because Ben and Ashton were both going for the ball. Ashton actually tripped him. If he hadn't tripped him, he may have gone and scored.
That was a very fun play. Glad to see, the big guys don't get an opportunity
Right.
sometimes to touch the ball, and he did there and caught it. I mean, good ball skills to catch the ball. Dawson Parrott also had an interception, which he took back for a touchdown. I think on that fumble recovery that it was Camden that
Got a scoop
and score. Yeah, so 2 defensive touchdowns this week, which was good to see. Camden Everhart also had 8 tackles and another fumble recovery outside of that one. So pretty good job defensively. You guys were getting a lot of bodies in there. I think a lot of people got to play, which is always good. Anthony Schrader played in this game, and he hasn't played in several weeks, so good to see him out there and starting to get healthy. So the defense continued their hot streak, and while Midway was able to strike once on a kickoff return, the defense didn't allow any points this week, and really didn't allow much of anything outside of that first drive.
Right.
Who stood out to you on the defensive side?
There were so many kids stepped up and made plays, and it's some of the usual suspects, and I think like I've said before, our defensive line probably didn't get all the credit they need. Because of what we're doing, they're canceling gaps, which allows Ross and Kyle and Connor and Riley to flow and make tackles. But if they're not doing those things, that's not happening. So
Right.
when we're having success, it's because of what they're doing up front, and those kids continue to play well. Eli's had a really good year. Plum has really come on here lately and played really well. Christian's just solid. He kind of does his job every week, and he may not get his name called near enough, but he's a young man that plays extremely hard, and I thought Cam played well this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a recap of last week. Give us a break here, and we'll be back talking about Wellington Napoleon.
Are you missing that human touch with your bank? Come talk to a real person at Community National Bank and Trust. We're your local bank that's small enough to know you, yet big enough to offer the best products. Stop by and see us at 101 South 65 Highway in Lincoln or 1695 Hilltop Drive in Warsaw. Your community, your bank, your relationship. Community National Bank and Trust. Federally insured, locally awesome. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
So last week, Wellington Napoleon took on the 2-6 Slater Wildcats, defeated them 41-20. I mentioned earlier, Wellington Napoleon is now at 5-3. They've got a nice win over Tipton on their resume. They played Adrian fairly closely, and they've been competitive.
Yes,
I think
yeah.
just overall. So starting with Wellnap's offense, we've heard a lot about their running back. What can we expect to see out of their offensive approach?
Well, last week actually the running back didn't play. From what I understand, he cut his finger and almost cut the tip of it off during 7th hour on Friday before they left to go to Slater. So that was not an easy task for them to go over there and redo a game plan on Friday afternoon to get ready to play a Friday night game, but they were able to do it and scored a bunch of points, scored 41 points. They've got 2 kids that have been playing quarterback, 12 and 6. 6, I think, is a sophomore, and if I have it right, 12 is a senior. But when 12 is not at quarterback, he's playing at receiver. And when they do that, that gives them 3 legitimate receiving threats with 3, 12, and 13. 3 is extremely fast. He's one of the faster kids on the field. They try to run some sweep, some jet sweep. They'll line him up in the backfield and run sweep with him. They'll target him in 13 quite a bit, and then when 12 moves into that slot, he becomes that next receiver that they don't have when he's standing at quarterback.
Okay.
So, I've told the kids, after watching that Slater game, they were kind of battling back and forth, and then when 6 went in and 12 went to receiver, that's when they really took off and scored a bunch of points. So I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe even 6 start the ball game. 44 with his finger, I fully expect him to play. I'm sure they'll tape it up and have him ready to go. A week after stitches, you're in a pretty good place. So I fully anticipate him playing. It's their senior night. They got 2 big old linemen, 77 and 79, who do a good job of getting off the ball and moving things. Their guards and centers are not as big as the rest of those guys, but they do a nice job in their pull game. They're extremely quick across the ball. So, they present a challenge. When you're 5-3 and it's senior night, they're going to come after us. They're going to bring everything that they've got, and we've got to be prepared from the start.
So when 6 is at quarterback, is that more of a pass approach, or what's the difference stylistically between those two?
Well, the thing is in the formations that they use more than anything else, because if they go to, if 13 and 3 are in it, they stand on the same side of the ball, the slot formation, or they'll be in pro where one's a flanker and one's a split. And it makes a difference in the way that you cover things. But if you've got 13 still standing on the back and 12 and 3 line up on his side, it changes the way that you approach the game. So it gives them one more weapon. It spreads the field a little bit wider, and when you do that, then it creates running lanes for big old 44. I think he's 6'1" or 6'2" and 220 pounds. I mean, he's a load.
And quick.
And he runs extremely well downhill. He plays linebacker for him, and he's a thumper on the defensive side.
So when they're trying to get the ball to 44, is it similar to an offensive approach that you've seen this year? Are they reading?
They're running some ISO stuff, and they're running a little bit of power and counter. It's some of the similar things that we've seen.
Okay. So and using those athletic interior linemen and the big tackles to kind of dominate. Will 12 run the ball when he's at quarterback?
He does some, yes. More than 6 does, but they're both good athletes. I mean, both of them play defense. They return kicks and do things for him. 12 is also their kicker. He's a very good kicker.
Okay.
Be one of the better kickers that we've seen, and since the Adrian game, we've not seen a kicker like him, and he might even be a little bit better than the Adrian kid as far as the way he kicks. He sure kicks it high. I know that, and get down around the 10 or 5, and so obviously that makes special teams important.
Yeah, and you might get an opportunity to return a couple kicks. It doesn't seem like I know we have every game, but it just seems like overall they don't kick deep. We haven't seen a lot of kickers that kick deep, and when Adrian was kicking, he managed, I think, to kick it out the end zone a couple times, or into the end zone.
He did a couple times, yeah.
So now that you guys, we mentioned Anthony Schrader being back. I've talked to you guys a little bit throughout the week, and it seems like Kyle is really on the mend and feeling, even though he's been playing, he may be even feeling his best right now.
Yep.
And so speaking to the health, I'd like to get you to talk about any type of different defensive looks you can throw with new health. Will you do anything different with personnel? Will you? I know you kind of get to change your look with the same personnel because you have so many guys that are just versatile. Connor, Kyle, those guys are kind of linebackers, kind of safeties. You're not afraid to bring Kyle off the edge or to blitz Connor up the middle or whatever. So does health play into the different defensive looks at all?
It may have more from just a personnel standpoint than anything else. One of the things that you want to do at different times is get speed on the field. So, we're not there yet, but the possibility does exist, and that's one thing we talked about when Anthony played so well against Windsor was, playing him at that outside linebacker spot and using Mac with his hand on the ground sometimes just to give us more speed there. And not that Mac isn't fast, but Anthony's faster than Mac, and Mac's faster than our defensive lineman. Right. So by making that one simple move, you get more speed on the field. So there'll be some times that we may do that in the future as we go forward, and then the rest of it is just trying to use our personnel, get lined up correctly to formations. Part of our struggle Saturday, I guess, was we didn't line up correctly to start the ball game. We were giving 2 gaps away, and once we got things corrected, then we were able to go, and that's kind of the deal this week is making sure that we line up in the right places when we attack it. They've got some formation stuff that we think we can take advantage of. I'm sure they look at us defensively and say, well, we can take advantage of this too. So it's kind of it'll be here's our adjustment to start the game, and then the adjustment to the adjustment, and then we'll see what happens.
And you're familiar with some things they might try and do, and they'll be familiar with some things you guys will try and do. The coaching staffs have some.
Well, yeah, that's what's going to be unique or fun for me is Andy Hampton, who's the head coach at Wellington, played for me when I was at Oak Grove. During that time, I was head basketball coach and was quarterback coach and offensive coordinator at Oak Grove. And Andy was one of the quarterbacks there. He's an all-state player, very good player for us, and went on to play at Northwest Missouri and was a great basketball player for me. And just a good kid, competitor and things. And I actually had an opportunity to visit with him a little bit last Saturday, and he talked about, we sent our seniors over to read to the elementary kids last week. And when Andy played for me, it was because he played football and basketball. My wife was an elementary teacher at that time. She wasn't in administration yet. I was sending those kids over all year long to read. And so Andy's got a bunch of cards and letters and things that those kids had written him during that time that he still keeps. So that's why that stuff is so important. Those kids make those connections, and it's a big deal to set traditions. The idea, like we talked about our kids last week with senior night, the idea is that we want the past to be tied to what you guys are doing. That generation that went before you, we want them to be proud of what you guys do on the field. And then we want to do things right and represent our school right and be good citizens and get out there and do things so that the little guys want to grow up and be you.
Right.
And when you have somebody that's 25 years later that says, hey, I've still got these letters, that's pretty impactful. Yeah,
definitely. And it's cool to see specifically with Lincoln, to see that culture building. I mean, I think that's really important to a good program, and it's awesome to see. Moving on to Wellknap's defense, you mentioned 44 already, middle linebacker, I'm assuming, comes down and thumps. Anybody else on their defense stick out on film?
The rest of those kids are really very similar as far as the linebackers and the secondary. They run well to the ball. I mean, they're good athletically. They've got two big old tackles in 77 and 79. They've gone back and forth between a 3-4 look and a 4-3. I really anticipate seeing them play a 4-3. That's what they played. They played against Windsor. They played it against Adrian, and I anticipate that that's what we'll see. But we've prepared for both.
Right.
In our game plan and the things that we've done, and we've tried to work the kids through both things. And we've seen the three front most recently. So I think our kids are prepared. We feel like we've got a good game plan going in to attack them. It's going to boil down again, adjustments to the adjustments, and then matchups. At this time of year, as you get into playoff football, sometimes the game is as much about the matchups that you have as it is about the schemes that you run.
Yeah. Well, so in their front eight, I know you mentioned a couple of their guys there. How does their front eight compare to some other teams you've played? When you spoke about the forefront and the success or the fact that was their game plan against Windsor and Adrian, when I scouted Adrian earlier in the year, Wellknap was a game that I watched a lot of, and it seemed like their front eight obviously didn't stop them because Adrian scored, I think, 28 points and won the ball game, but contained them better than a lot of teams have.
They did. They really did, and they, that 4-3, they'll roll the guy down on the tight end, and I fully anticipate them to do that to Mac. They get in that 4-3, they'll roll him down, put an extra guy in the box, and it forces us to have one more defender. And I think that's where us running a little bit of veer helps now, because we can change what we do to that guy that's lined up over Mac. We can man block him, we can down and double and leave him as a read, we can pull and kick him, we can do some different things. So hopefully, as the night goes, we'll figure out what works best for us, and once we get there, we'll kind of live in it a little bit.
Okay. So just lastly, touching on Wellknap's defense, what's the strength of their defense?
They're just pretty solid. It's one of those things where they do a lot of things pretty well. Mm-hmm. They tackle well, they run the football. 44 he's a player. I mean, you'll see him make plays all over the field. He will move to the strength, so when we flip the strength with Mac and Kyle and going from one side to the next, you'll see him move with them. And so it's going to be our ability to get to him and block him, and then they've got some other guys that just play fast. They just keep showing up in the frame. They may not do anything that's really flashy, but they just are constantly there.
Well, I'm assuming some of that athleticism you're talking about with 12 and 6 and that was 13.
And 3. I mean, those guys
translates.
Yes, it does, but very much so. And then they've got a couple other kids, 25, 21, 24 that play. They're not as big at the defensive ends as maybe some of the teams that we've seen, but 77 and 79 are big old boys.
Yeah.
They're 250. I don't have a program, a roster on them, but I'm going to guess they're 250 or better. I mean, they're big old kids.
Okay. Well, that's Wellknap's defense. I think we'll go ahead and go to another break, and then we'll talk about what's at stake this week.
Veracruz Trace Mexican Restaurant in Lincoln, Missouri is proud to support Lincoln and Warsaw High School football. The friendly staff at Veracruz serves delicious and authentic Mexican cuisine Sunday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday through Saturday from 11 to 10. try it for yourself at 455 North Highway 65 or call it in at 660-547-0315.
Okay, Coach, so coming back here, I want to talk about some of the things that happened last week. We talked about how the game wasn't able to be played on Friday, so while we were kind of twiddling our thumbs waiting for the lights to come back on, which they didn't until everybody had left, we got to watch the score for Russellville, and we got to watch the score for Cole Camp, and something that everybody was kind of thinking about because those outcomes and then you guys taking care of business against Cass allowed you to jump up to that one spot in the district. And we've talked, maybe not on the air, but we've talked about the importance of the district running through Lincoln and of having a more savory matchup from the 1 seed than to move to the 2 seed. So this week, and not to mention, you told me before we went on about how this is essentially the conference championship for you guys. If you lose, you're no longer, your shot at the conference is done, basically.
That's correct.
And so just talk about, what we...
And that's to your point, that's what we talked about at practice, is that, we're preparing. You have an opportunity to win a conference championship.
Yeah.
We haven't done that in a while.
Right.
And so to be in a position where you control your destiny in that, and we also control our destiny of whether or not we're going to be that 1 seed,
right.
and whether we get to play all those games at home or whether we're going to have to jump on a bus and go on the road. And at this time of year, you want to play at home as often as you can. And so those are the things that are really at stake. If we go out and we're able to win and Adrian wins, we split the conference. If Tipton were able to beat Adrian, then we would be the conference champions outright. The only thing we have control over is what we do. So our goal is to go over there and win. We want to win, and we want to secure the home field advantage and then see what happens from there.
And you guys have been tested this year. We've talked about Tipton in the past, and they caught you. They had a good game plan, and I think we just came out a little flat. Maybe we were expecting to go in and win. I think that I don't know if galvanized is the right word. I might try and say that Adrian's win galvanized you, but that kind of tempered expectations. It allowed you guys to maybe be humbled a little bit.
Well, I think maybe most importantly, I think it just refocused the kids.
Yeah.
You go in and everybody's, well, you can do this, you can do that.
Right.
Well, you have to prove it.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we talked about tonight, and I've used Mike Tomlin's line is, and we'll use a couple things here real quick, but it's not what you're capable of, it's what you're willing to do.
Right.
There are a lot of people that have the ability to do things, and we all have abilities, but what are you willing to do to earn that? And that was one of our messages with tradition. The tradition at Lincoln isn't winning. The tradition is the work required to win. And if you have an expectation and willingness to do the work, then here's the benefit and the payoff of it. And I think that's what separates good programs from average programs and great ones from the good ones. It's your willingness to accept the work required to be good. And if you can accept that work, then there's a benefit that comes from that. And that's what our seniors, I think, have begun to realize, is that we weren't working hard enough. We weren't putting in the time on film. We weren't taking the right attitude at practice, and it refocused them, and it's kind of reshaped the way that we go about our business.
I like that, and I think it bears out when you look at the outcome against Adrian, you look at the outcome against Cole Camp, it really bears out. You guys have been tested. The point that I'm trying to get to is that while it's a week 9 game, win or lose, obviously implications in the conference and the district, but your season's not over either way. But it being their senior night, being that they're a competitive team, being that there are some pressure to win the conference and to hold on to that 1 seed, it's kind of simulating a playoff atmosphere in the last week, and kind of a test because you got to go on the road and you're not getting to play them at home. So the importance of preparation, the importance of taking your opponent seriously, but what is it this week that you're really preaching? Just is it the same?
Well,
stay in the moment. Don't look forward. Don't think.
It's the same thing. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's you got 48 minutes, and that's it. And what I told them yesterday was, the teams that have the ability to focus on the next thing are the ones that are able to be successful. The teams that get caught up on past success or past failures, if they can't get past it, they can't do the next thing. And that's what we want to do. We want to do the next thing. And we set 3 goals in the beginning, be the best in our conference, the best in our district, and the best in the state. And this is goal 1, step 1, however you want to put it. Our eyes are on something bigger,
right.
But we know that this is a step in that process. And so we want to go out and finish it. We want to go out and take care of business and do things the right way. For a coach, the part that makes you nervous about this week is we have parent-teacher conferences tonight, which means they don't have any school tomorrow. and without school tomorrow, then your routine is messed up.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I preached the last 3 days is, guys, you got to get up, get out of bed, get breakfast, get something to drink, and go take a nap. That's fine, but your body needs to be fueled. And if you wait until noon, you ate at 7 p.m. and you go all the way till noon,
Yeah.
that's way too long. You know,
Yeah.
that's 17 hours, and your body's depleted, and you will not be ready to play. So that's a challenge, and those kids have got to step up on their own and do the right thing.
So you're not going to change anything about when you're getting them to the facility or when you're getting them ready to kind of counteract that. You just giving them the tools to.
Right, giving them the blueprint, say this
Yeah.
is what needs to be done, and as seniors, we should be able to trust them.
Yeah.
Because and again, that goes back to my point of the things that I tell them all the time. There's a difference between being a boy and being a young man. A boy always wants to know what's in it for me. What am I going to get from this? A young man wants to know what can I do.
Yeah.
What can I do to make this situation better? And this is what you can do.
Okay, I like that. All right, Coach, thanks for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. This Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff in Wellington. We'll see the Lincoln Cardinals take on the Belknap Tigers in a conference championship match for the Cardinals. As we are every week, Brett Bryan and I will be live on BCE TV at www.citylinktv.com shortly before kickoff, about 10 minutes before kickoff. Join us if you can't make it. Coach, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
This has been a BCE TV production. Thank you for watching.